You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. This is season 2, episode number 21, a World Baseball Classic for the ages. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and most importantly, subscribe to our podcast. Follow us on the socials, Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram, and Fly the W on Facebook, or email us, flythew670@gmail.com. Crawly, happy Thursday. Happy 1 week officially from opening day.
It's getting exciting, man. News is flying like crazy. We're right there, and it's been. I think it's been a fun off season. I think there's been a lot happening. Whether you talk about all the off season moves the Cubs made, to the normal spring training finally for the first time in years. Throw in the World Baseball Classic, and this has been a fun off season. And I've been glad that the listeners have been along for the ride, and I'm excited for what this season holds.
Absolutely. The anticipation is growing. I can feel it with you and I doing this podcast. I can feel it on 670 The Score. Very exciting. 1 week from today, Cubs home opener taking on the Brewers. We will get to who is going to be the opening day pitcher in a few minutes. But first, Crawly, since the last time we podcast, the Cubs have played a handful of games, and they are playing one right now with Wesneski on the mound on this Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, we talked last episode about how streaky this Cubs team is. Win streak, losing, win streak, losing. So now they're on a 3-game winning streak. On Tuesday, the Cubs beat the Royals 6-2 in a game that was shortened a little bit because of rain. They only went 6.5 innings. But good to see the Cubs offense come alive, scoring 6 runs on 8 hits, going 3 for 9 with runners in scoring position. Jameson Taillon, who hadn't started a spring training game in a bit, pitched 5 innings, gave up 2 runs on 4 hits. No walks, but 9 Ks, Dustin. So that's pretty nice to see, huh?
Very nice to see. I really was impressed with the 9 Ks, and to go along with that, no walks.
Right, and he gave up a 2-run home run to MJ Melendez in the third. They only used 1 pitcher out of the pen. That was Mark Leiter Jr., who I mentioned on the last podcast, has a really good chance of taking Brandon Hughes, what we thought was going to be a spot in the bullpen. He pitched 1 inning and struck out all 3 batters he faced. We learned some news today about Brandon Hughes. Like I said, on the offense, the bats broke up. No one wants anything to do with Ian Happ. He went 1 for 1 with 2 walks and 2 runs. Eric Hosmer with an RBI single and a walk. Christopher Morel hit a laser beam home run. And Patrick Wisdom, 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs. He has had one great spring. So
Yes, he has. And Christopher Morel, Crawly, is going to make it hard for the Cubs to make a decision here.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing about Morel is that he gets really streaky. You know what I mean? Is that he'll go for a streak and really struggle, and then he'll all of a sudden just start ripping it up like he's doing right now. And that's where I don't think the Cubs' mind has changed over the last couple games on where he's starting the season personally.
Okay.
On
Wednesday. Yeah, let's get into Wednesday now.
Yeah, the Cubs traveled to their former park, Hohokam, to take on the Oakland A's. They did not have a starter go in the game. Drew Smiley pitched a minor league game, so the Cubs used 9 different pitchers, each taking an inning. Adbert with the first inning, followed by Boxberger and Michael Fulmer. Rowan Wick gave up a solo home run.
Shocking.
Anthony K. Julian Merriweather pitched scoreless innings. Rucker gave up 2 hits and a run. He struggled a little bit lately. Ryan Baruki and Eric Stout finished up without giving out a run. The 3 Cubs free agent pitching signings that they made this year, Brad Boxberger, as far as the bullpen is concerned, Brad Boxberger, Michael Fulmer, and Julian Merriweather have not given up any runs this spring. And so that's, like I said, the Cubs just do a really great job of identifying those guys. So excited to see what they do this season. And then on offense, Cubs had 3 home runs, Cody Bellinger with a solo home run, Edwin Rios with a 2-run blast, and then Christopher Morel hit a home run in consecutive games. So he appears to be heating up like we talked about. The Cubs won 4-2. We talked about Morel. I think the idea of a Wisdom and platoon with Wisdom and Rios at third, is just really interesting. I mean, obviously, I love Christopher Morel. He is honestly one of the nicest guys. Met him, got to talk to him at Club 400. He visited with me a little bit at spring training. He's awesome. I just think that, and the funny thing is he's a fun guy. He's such a fan favorite. I don't know if you saw this, Dustin. There was one spring training game that got called in the 4th inning. I think it was against the Reds. It's pouring out, and everybody's running to the bus, and he's just sitting there signing autographs. Such a great dude. I hate the fact that I really feel he's going to go to Iowa, but like I said, he needs the everyday at bats. He needs to recognize breaking pitches. And you have a platoon situation here. You got Patrick Wisdoms, who's having just an unreal spring. He's a right-handed batter. We know that about P-Wiz. He's slashing 357, 438, 536, 4 walks, 12 Ks, 10 hits, 2 doubles, 1 home run. And then you got Edwin Rios, who's a left-handed hitter. You could bat him against righties. He's slashing 206, 308, 618 with 3 walks, 12 Ks, 7 hits, 1 triple, and 4 home runs.
He's definitely found his power stroke in spring training. There's no doubt about that. That's not a bad little platoon. I think I could live with that.
Right, and again, if you can sit there and limit how many times Patrick Wisdom has to face right-handers and vice versa with Edwin Rios, you have potential for some really good pop, which is what this lineup really, really is lacking. So, again, people forget how young Christopher Morel is. People forget he jumped over AAA, didn't even go to AAA. So I'm fine with that. It's just, he's just such a good story. I hope the best for him, and I hope to see him in the majors sooner rather than later.
Amen.
Like your guy Hayden Wesneski is on the bump today. He's gone 4.2 innings so far, 4 hits, 0 runs, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. So I think it's fair to say we're a week away. I don't see any kind of situation, barring injury, that Wesneski's not your 5th starter. I think he's earned it. I think he's had one heck of a camp, and I think they're going to give it a try.
Yeah, he's definitely earned it. They may not need him to be in that role right away, but there's no doubt that he has earned that role. He has had really impressive. I mean, maybe one of the most impressive springs of any starter.
Yeah, and I would have loved to have, in a normal year, what Javier Assad would have done, and if that would have kind of really, But I think with what Javier did in the World Baseball Classic, he set himself up for a nice role in the bullpen, especially with Keegan kind of struggling a little bit with the velocity. Hopefully you can get some more info from Tommy Hotovy about that next time he's on the Mully and Haw show. So
absolutely. Next week, hopefully.
The Cubs do lead 4-1, just so you know. Tucker Barnhart is the one who drove in the run for the Cubs. So it's a pitching duel right now. So we're kind of just waiting and seeing what happens here. But Dustin, the Cubs, there was a ton of Cubs news today, and that's just what happens when we get close to spring training, right? You get to the point where this news comes out, whether it's from the baseball ops or the business ops. There's just a lot to talk about.
Right, you got to get that roster down. Guys are moving. Guys are going to different camps, other assignments. Absolutely.
And then from the business side, what are some new things that are going to be happening? What are you going to have at the ballpark that's new this year? Both sides of Chicago, both baseball teams are doing that. I saw it today. So just a lot of action. Right before we came on, literally minutes before we came on, roster move, Estaban Quiorz to the Phillies for cash consideration. That's fine with the huge cluster that the Cubs have with the infielders, as far as all the infielders from McKinstry, Cairo to DeLucio. I mean, just go down the list. Bote, Madrigal. We just have a huge list of these guys. It's you had to start getting rid of some of them. So thank you, Esteban, for your service. He's going to be on the Daily Random Cub Twitter one day. You remember that guy, Estaban Quiorz? All right. So roster moves, Nelson Velazquez option to Iowa. He was one of the guys. He was a long shot for that right fielder spot. He he did okay last year for the Cubs, but he just, like I said, you have a very short time to make an impression. In the major leagues, they're not going to let you kind of ride that out if you're struggling. And so he didn't get every day at bats, and the spring he didn't do much. So he's going to be optioned to Iowa. Sergio Alcantara, David Bote, Nick Birdie, Ben DeLucio, Brendan Little, Matt Mervis, Dom Nunez, Manny Rodriguez, and Cam Sanders, all reassigned to minor league camp. So that was 10 cuts that were made today.
Yeah, I hate to be right about Matt Mervis, but he's just not the right time yet for him. He'll be here someday. He's going to be good someday. Just not going to happen right now.
Matt Mervis was definitely the big name on this one that, just after everything that happened this last season. Nick Birdie really opened a lot of eyes in camp. He's healthy. He really impressed. Cam Sanders, I would say if he's not up with the Cubs by the All-Star break, I would be absolutely stunned. He has had some of the most, like I said, him and Jeremiah Estrada have been my two guys that I've just been so impressed with. You can put Nick Birdie up high on that list. David Bote had a great spring, but I think they know what he is, you know?
Yeah, if they have an injury, the first guy they're going to bring back up is David Bote, probably.
Right. So they know what he is. And here's the thing is that we're getting to the point where other teams are having injuries and they may be looking at other teams' rosters you're going to kind of, you got a log jam in this second/short/third baseman role in the Cubs. So I think that it wouldn't surprise me if you see injuries that the Cubs end up making some moves to get rid of a few more of those guys. So like I said, some of these guys will be up quicker than others. Don't know just yet. We also had some injury updates.
Yeah, and good injury updates, I think.
Well, some good, some not so good. David Ross told reporters that Seiya Suzuki will start normal BP, hitting in the cage, throwing from 90 feet, and light base running as well. He's going to stick around in Arizona for extended spring training, work his way through the minor league rehabs. But, good to see that, bit by bit, we're hearing more and more that Seiya's kind of doing better and better.
He'll be back before May 1st, I think.
I would hope so. That'd be good. May 1st, sure. I can deal with that. We talked a little bit about Mike Tauchman and stuff like that. Mike Tauchman is not on the 40-man roster. So if you were to add him, then you would have to take someone off the 40-man roster. And I don't know if the Cubs, for the Cubs, they have to kind of get a general feeling for how long he's going to be out. So it'll be interesting to see, but good that he, the quicker the better. Obviously, they're a better team with Seiya on it.
Oh, for sure. But it's good. I mean, I think this is a definite step in the right direction. I don't see this going backwards. I see this going forwards.
Right. And as long, like I said, obliques are tricky, but fingers crossed. Kyle Hendricks told reporters he has 3 bullpen sessions left until he starts throwing live BP. Again, I still am on the belief it's going to be, June or even maybe July before we see him. I know it sounds good, but this process takes some time to build it up. And I think a lot of it really depends on how the Cubs are doing and how bad of a need they have for pitchers. You know what I mean?
Right. And hopefully they won't need one right away. So hopefully it won't be an injury that is accelerating that, but then it could get the bullpen a little bit more robust if you're able to add Kyle back into the every 5th day thing.
Just so you know, the game right now just got tied. Corbin Carroll tripled on a line drive to right fielder Patrick Wisdom. Geraldo Perdomo walks, and then there was a throwing error by pitcher Hayden Wesneski. So it is tied. But he is out of the inning, so no big deal. Back to the injuries, though. Brandon Hughes said he's dealing with a left knee injury. The last time he's appeared in a game was last Thursday. We talked about this on the last podcast with Keegan's velocity and with Brendan not having the greatest spring. And maybe this is part of it. Maybe that knee injury is part of it. But that's where I kind of feel like Mark Leiter is definitely looking like he may have a roster spot, and the Cubs will not have a left-hander in the bullpen.
That's pretty crazy to think about, but at this moment, it looks like it's not going to be.
And then Cubs, this is where the news starts getting a little bad here, Dustin, but the Cubs third base prospect, James Triantos, we had him on the Fly the W podcast last spring. Great kid, infielder. He was on the Myrtle Beach Pelicans. He's going to undergo surgery to repair a meniscus in his right knee. Looks to miss 6 to 8 weeks. Not the end of the world. He'll get his season in. He'll get his work in. But, wishing James nothing but the best. Great guy. And then the Cubs last season drafted Nazir Mule. And unfortunately, he's going to undergo Tommy John surgery. Nazir was one of those guys that I was really wanting to watch. He's a two-way player. He pitches, and he also plays shortstop, and he can play a lot of other position. He is an athletic freak, and I really wanted to see what he would do this year. His season's done, so that's kind of some bummer. That's a bummer so far,
Yeah, we'll get to see him, but it seems like now Tommy John is not what Tommy John used to be, right?
No, it's almost like everybody gets it's not even that big of a deal anymore. But now we got some news from the Cubs about opening day. Marcus Stroman, breaking news. He will be the Cubs' opening day starter. That news comes via Marcus Stroman on Twitter. So, there is no doubt about that, right, Dustin?
No, there was no doubt about it, but I did say this morning on the show that I didn't know if a guy that couldn't bother to get himself to CubsCon deserved to get the ball on opening day. Definitely opening weekend, but I don't know if I would have given him the ball on the home opener.
Right. I mean, trust me, nobody loves Cubs convention more than me, and I wish he would have gone. I think that was, I don't know what was happening or what was going on in his life, but as far as the guy, I mean, I don't know anyone else he would have given the ball to be honest with you. So,
pretty unique, though, that he's the one that lets the news out via social media. I just think that's where we're at today in this world. I think trying to connect with more people, a younger audience, and I think they accomplished that.
Stro, he loves chatting on Twitter, so, that's that. So there's going to be a really cool 2023 opening day pin for the first 10,000 fans that get into Wrigley. Season ticket holders, as per tradition, will hold the American flag on the field. There will be a flyover, and the national anthem will be sung by Mr. John Vincent. And
Love it.
First pitch and stretch by 2023 Hall of Fame Ford Frick Award winner Patrick Hughes of 670 The Score, the Pat and Ron show. Absolutely. How exciting is that for Pat Hughes? I mean, opening day pitch.
Very, very cool. Yep, very cool.
Now, there are some changes that I want to make our listeners aware of, especially those that are going to be out on opening day. At 20, gates, this isn't going to affect opening day, but if you are going to games, especially in April, it used to be, Dustin, that the gates would open 2 hours before game time. That's still going to happen on the home openers, on Saturday games, and special occasions. What that means, special occasions, I do not know. But every other day, if it's not a special occasion, I'm guessing Mother's Day or some days like that, I guess holidays maybe would be my only thing I could think of. But I think now it's going to be 90 minutes before first pitch. So that was kind of surprising to me,
Is there a reason behind that? Do you don't like that? I'm hearing, if I'm interpreting your voice correctly. I think that's a fair amount of time. Does that mean we're not going to get to see any batting practice if we go in that
well,
late?
You're going to see batting practice, but you're not going to. So if you went in, and me being the bobblehead junkie, first in line to get the bobblehead, I'd run in and grab it, and then you could watch the Cubs BP practice. Chances are you're not going to see Cubs BP practice anymore. You will see the visitors BP practice, but not the Cubs. Does it affect me in a major way? No, I know, but I do know a lot of people that like to go in there and kind of just like to hang out in the park and see BP, the Cubs BP and all that stuff. So a little surprised. I heard it's something more in line with other teams do, but
okay. But the rest of the stuff that we're going to talk about and the rest of the stuff I've seen on social media, pretty cool, pretty exciting.
Yeah, the Cubs will unveil the CD Peacock Trophy Room. It's going to be inside the Marquee Gate entrance. It will house the 2016 championship trophy, the NLCS trophy. So I don't know what exactly all is going to be there, but it's going to be open on game days. So obviously the Cubs never really had a trophy. So, it was kind of one of those things that, I forget who said it, but when the commissioner handed Tom Ricketts the World Series trophy, he said, now you got something for your trophy room. And Tom said, we don't have a trophy room. So, it's good that they're going to have it. If you remember when the Cubs won it all, they used to have it, the trophy in Gallagher Way, and you used to be able to get a picture with it. It was right next to the Cubs store.
Yeah.
And they took that away the last couple of years. And so it was the trophy was located inside the Gallagher Way, the office building where the front office meets and people go. So, I mean, I got to go in there and see it a couple of times, but it wasn't for the general public. You couldn't go and see the trophy. You couldn't get a picture with it. So I think that's awesome that people are going to have a chance to do that again.
Well, it's for the people, right? I mean, that's what it's for. It should be something that the fans get to do, get to see, get to walk past, get a picture with. And it sounds like in this situation that will be how it will be moving forward.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that they have some different awards in there. I know that they have them, again, they have them in the Cubs store. They have them in the office building, different gold gloves, different MVP awards that they kind of have. That players, I don't know if they donated them for a period of time or what, but they're there. So I'm interested to see what's in there. Now, the other big news is commemorative tickets.
I love this, Crawly. I love this idea.
Yeah, it's going to cost $8 if you're interested, but all your Cubs tickets used to be paper, right, back in the day. And then the Cubs started moving towards digital tickets. And so for a while, you could have paper tickets and digital tickets. So as a season ticket holder, I would get my box that would have like, you would tear out your tickets and it would have like a little ticket booklet, but I also had the digital tickets. So for me as a season ticket holder, it made my life easier that I could just zap it on my phone and send you, Dustin, a ticket instead of having to worry about giving you a physical ticket. But at the same time, I'm a huge ticket collector and I have stubs from some very famous games. I have all my 2016 tickets. I never cut them up. I sold everybody them digitally. So I have the whole book from 2016, including the playoffs and World Series, completely uncut. I have the game. I have stubs from the David Bote Ultimate Slam, from my kids' first games, those type of things. So there is a market. Like if you want to get
huge market for tickets, yes.
Yeah, for ticket stubs. If you want to get a World Series stub, depending, and like I said, if it's uncut, they're worth a lot of money. Kerry Wood 20 strikeout game is one that comes to mind that's worth a ton of money because if you can find one in really good condition because it was raining that day. It was an awful day. It was like 10,000 people, maybe tops in the stadium. And so if you're somebody that has those, I've seen them go for about $1,000.
Wow.
So, now, like I said, the only thing that kind of bothers me about this, I like the idea. One thing that kind of bothers me is I think that you can pick up anyone can get a ticket, a commemorative ticket if you pay the $8. I was hoping it would be more you had to have a ticket to the game.
Yeah, I think you should have to have it. Well, I agree with you. I think you should have to have a ticket to the game.
That would make it a little bit cooler. So that's another thing. As far as some food outings, there's going to be a small Chevelle burger stand opening in the bleachers. It seems like the bleachers always gets the best stuff. And the neutral zone, it's some sort of vodka seltzer drink. It's going to be an outdoor terrace that will offer concessions on top of the DraftKings Sportsbook. So that's going to be on the right field side. So, I might have to do a little bit of walking and exploring. That's the opposite side of where I sit, but it might be cool to see there. I'm really just hoping for some more variety in the grandstand. I feel like the bleachers, whether you're talking about hot dogs or some of the other things that they have, this new Chevelle burger stand has like a huge variety of food, whereas like in the grandstand, not so much. So hoping that they have more food offerings. This terrace sounds interesting. I'd like to, check it out. Hopefully it'll be ready on opening day. I'm not sure.
All right, talk about the 26-ounce beer bats. You talked about that when you were out at spring training. Now they're bringing them to Wrigley, huh?
Yeah, Dustin, I don't think this one was thought through very well. I'm going to tell you something, Dustin, is that, I talked to you about spring training. You don't really worry about the wins and losses, the bad umpire calls, whatever. Most of the time, if you're going to spring training, you want to see the players, right? You want to see, there's PCA. He's going to be up soon one of these days. I get to see him in a game right now. Those type of things, like, I'm going to be able to watch all the other. I've seen Patrick Wisdom play. I've seen Nico Horner play. I'm there to see kind of young guys. I don't really care about the wins and losses. But, when all of a sudden the games count, or if you're cold and miserable, or you've spent a bunch of money, I'm just worried. First of all, they're expensive, the beer bats. I think I paid over $30 to drink 30 ounces of beer. I don't think it's the best bargain out there. I did it just to say I did it. But I would say that for me, imagine like the fights in the bleachers. If you have these things and guys are just going to start hitting each other with them.
Well, are we going to have the beers? Are we going to what are they going to call these? The beer bat snakes now? Are you going to be able to get these things inside of each other and have this long beer bong, if you will, floating around the outfield?
And then I remember I talked to Demp when I had him on the podcast, there was one time I remember he gave up. This was 2007. This was the year of the Pierzynski AJ fight, the big punch. And then, and then when the White Sox came to Wrigley on that same year, Demp gave up a 3-run home run to Pierzynski and people were throwing crap on the field. Like, imagine if all of a sudden, the Cubs blow a lead, or let's say there's a fight on the field and fans are fired up. I'm guaranteeing those beer bats are getting flung on the field.
Oh yeah, I agree. I don't think that'll last long. You might be able to get those might be worth some money someday, Crawly, because they will not last very long. This is the Fly the W 670 podcast. It is season 2. It's episode 21, a World Baseball Classic for the ages. Don't forget to listen, download, review, most importantly, subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. And in this segment, Crawly interviews Russ Dorsey, great guy, national MLB insider for Bally Sports, on the success of the World Baseball Classic.
Joining me now on the Fly the W podcast, he is the national MLB insider for Bally Sports. And for a few years, he was with us on the beat with the Chicago Cubs. Russ Dorsey, how are you, Russ?
Crawly, I'm doing great, man. I appreciate the invite.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you were a rock star when you were here with the Cubs. I always enjoyed your questions and had fun. And then I got to see you enjoying this World Baseball Classic and being able to cover it. From your perspective, now I know the last World Baseball Classic was in 2017. Did you ever? Were you a journalist at that time? Were you able to go any games back then?
I did not. Was locked in for that as well. And I think the difference between then, when I had just graduated or about to graduate from college, and this time around when I'm in the business and baseball is my life, it's the excitement not only of me but of people around me, because you're a baseball fan for life. I'm a baseball fan for life. Like, people, they're not worried about us, but it's getting the casual watcher and people who didn't really know baseball like that or didn't watch baseball a ton saying, you know what, this WBC, it looks really exciting. And I think that's been the coolest part for me of the last 2 weeks, was that you got to see baseball center stage, and the outpouring of love for the game and watching the game in its purest form was so fun to watch for me.
Now, the pool play was in 4 locations: Tokyo, Taillon, Miami, and Phoenix. Were you able to you were catching games where, in Phoenix and Miami? Because I saw you in Arizona.
Yeah, just in Phoenix. So I wasn't able to see the final earlier this week, but I think the excitement level for other countries was apparent, right? Whether it was Puerto Rico, DR, Australia, Japan, Chinese Taipei, like all these teams were like, those games in the first round of pool play over in Taiwan were a madhouse. When Yu Chang homered back-to-back nights, that those places look explosive. And same thing in Japan when Otani was doing his thing over there. Same thing in Phoenix, where you have Great Britain out of nowhere, like giving Team USA a run for its money in pool play, when you're watching Canada do their thing in pool play. And then in Miami, the electricness of Venezuela, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican. Like, it feels like each pool brought its own level of excitement.
And what I like about the pool play is he also kind of had some really unique stories, countries that you may not think of as baseball hotbeds that kind of get a chance. And so you had the story of Andre Satoria, who was an electrician for the Czech Republic, and he strikes out Shohei Ohtani. And you know what? It was just like, they were so respectful of each other. Just like when I was looking at it, I was like, it seemed like the camaraderie between the teams was just something that I've never seen before.
Yeah, and I think the one thing, and I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago, is that, when you have baseball like here in the States or in Major League Baseball, there's a language barrier. Guys are coming from different places, and you don't always get the comfort that guys get when they're playing with in their own countries, right, with their countrymen. And in this tournament, you got to see what I've called baseball in its purest form, where it is culture. It is the love of baseball. It is language not being an issue. And even when you're seeing countries go off against each other, like you talked about in this situation, it is a respect for somebody else who loves the game and plays the game like you do. And I think that's why you see so much respect and admiration between players in this tournament, because it's like, man, this is really cool, not only to play for my country, but to see the love that you have for your country is also really cool. And so playing you as a competitor, it's an honor for a lot of guys.
Right. And like I said, the stories in the pool, my favorite one was at Duque Hebert, who's 21-year-old pitcher, Team Nicaragua. Tell us a little bit about what happened with Duque there, because that is just an unreal story.
Yeah, you go out on the mound for Nicaragua at 21 years old, and you strike out Juan Soto, and you strike out Julio Rodriguez, and I believe it was it might have been Manny Machado.
Rafael
Devers. And at the end of the game, a scout comes up to you. How would you like to pitch for the Detroit Tigers? And you sign a contract there and will now be playing affiliated ball. That's fantastic, because that kid's life has changed in a blink of an eye. And so, like you said, these stories are amazing but the fact that this kid was competing at a high level against some of the best players in the world, some that we consider some of the biggest stars in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and when I look at the tournament as a whole, it's like what you said, trying to get the casual fan here in the United States, but also just the worldwide audience and getting people more interested. And so, there was more teams added to the pool this year, which I think helped. And I like seeing more European teams in there just because, Asia, Latin America, North America, hotbed of baseball, but, really interested in kind of maybe seeing, I know they have the London series coming up, the Cubs and Cardinals again. So, I thought that the European fans really kind of did a really good job as far as Great Britain and stuff like that. I thought they were fun,
Yeah, no, I think they were one of the surprises in pool play, right? Like, I think the team that I saw them in an exhibition against the Milwaukee Brewers before the tournament started. And I looked at that squad and I said, you know what? This might go bad for them. Not because guys weren't trying, just because the talent deficit was so much. Like the Brewers didn't necessarily have their A lineup out there, and it was one of those games where you're really grateful for the pitch clock. And you look at Great Britain, and this 19-year-old first rounder, Harry Ford, is their best player. And so that's a lot of pressure for a young kid. And then the team a week later in pool play was giving Team USA a run for its money and was really out there. You seeing Vance Worley, who you haven't seen in the big leagues since, I think, 2018, going out there and holding his own. I think for me, I think it's really cool to see a team like that had very low expectations go out there and compete at the highest level. And so, I understand what you're saying about the field, because I do think that added to some of the excitement, seeing new countries involved. Biggest field they ever had in a World Baseball Classic. So going into 2026, is that a way you can create more excitement with more countries in there? I think that might be the answer.
Now, I don't know about you. There's obviously, two surprises for me in the pool play. I thought Cuba didn't look as good as I expected. What do you attribute that to? They finished 2-2. They advanced to the next round. But when I look at the opponent, you had Italy, Netherlands, Panama, Chinese Taipei. I just always thought of Cuba when I was growing up as just this dominant baseball island where some of the greatest players come. And I just feel like they barely beat Australia. They got walloped by the U.S. It just, I don't know. It didn't seem like I was surprised by that.
Yeah, I think when we think of Cuba as the baseball hotbed, it's been about what the game was in Cuba. You were a kid growing up watching guys come over. I think what the difference has been, and it's really interesting seeing when the WBC first started, right, where you had Jose Abreu playing, when you had Yuli Gurriel playing for Team Cuba, and those guys came over here and became stars in the big leagues in Major League Baseball. And to that point, Yoenis Cespedes, same thing. And you see all these stars that have left the island and come over to the big leagues and created careers for themselves. Well, at some point, you're losing that top-end talent. And Cuba had as much top-end talent as any place in the world for about 20, 30 years there, right? Where you have guys coming over, El Duque, Livan Hernandez's brother, it was guy after guy after guy after guy, not only coming over to the States, but making a huge impact. And so after a while, when you lose that top-end talent, it's hard to replenish it. Yeah, every once in a while, you'll get a Luis Robert, you'll get somebody like that, but you're not going to have the year-to-year stars coming out of Cuba like we once saw. So for me, that's why I think they weren't necessarily at the level that we've last seen Cuba at on that stage. Yeah, they had Luis Robert. Yeah, they had Yohan Moncada, and Moncada played really well. And I know a lot of White Sox fans are happy about that. But without that talent that we saw for all of those years, it's going to be really hard to compete when those guys are dispersed in the States.
And I got to say, seeing the Dominican Republic not make it out of pool play, I mean, that Puerto Rico Dominican, but that was shocking to me as well. With all that was a lot of Major League talent on that team to not advance. That was unbelievable. Yeah,
it was definitely a surprise. I don't think it's crazy to say they came in as the favorite, even with Japan there, with the roster that they had initially, even though they didn't have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., which was a big thing. If they had advanced to the next round, they probably would have had him. But yeah, you see a loaded roster like that, a lineup like that, a pitching staff that's headlined by Sandy Alcantara. You're thinking, okay, this team is going to at least make it to the semifinal, if not the final, and win it all. So definitely a huge surprise there.
Now, the one team also that surprised me, and it wasn't just pool play, but even if you take a look going into the quarterfinals to the semifinals, was Team Mexico. I guess, I just don't really, I mean, obviously Fernando Valenzuela when I was a kid, Fernando Mania and all that stuff, but that Mexican team was super impressive, and they played Japan, Japan had to come back in the ninth. I mean, that team just looks unbelievable. Team Mexico just played with so much passion.
You look at all around the diamond, one, you're seeing a ton of big league talent, right? But I think the spark plug for them, Randy Arozarena, who is Cuban and had the permission to play for Mexico from the country's president. And I think when you look at Randy Arozarena and every big moment, he's always there, right? He's always in the middle of it, whether that's in the World Series or in the postseason, right before he even was playing in the big leagues full time. Then he wins Rookie of the Year. And then every postseason, you expect him to do something big. And anytime the lights are on, he shows up. So to see that guy in the middle of Mexico's run to the semis, it was not a surprise to me at all. But it's really cool that people got to see the star that is Randy Arozarena.
Now, Russell, I take a lot of pride in being a Cub fan and thinking we're the best fan base in baseball. I don't care what they say in that boring old town of St. Louis. But I feel like the international fans absolutely rock it. And the one thing I really love is I feel like baseball has been hurt by the unwritten rules of the game, where you talk about a guy like a Arozarena and it was almost encouraged where they're wearing Great Britain was wearing the robe with the King's hat, or they had the sombrero on, and Arozarena making the catches and making the stick. Right. I think that was just fun and flair that, to me, I could see some old stodgy baseball guys being like, oh, that's not, you would have gotten plunked in the ribs in my day. This was just fun. And I think that came across, especially on TV.
Absolutely. And I think those teams embrace that and realize man, we have an opportunity to have that fun, to have that flair. Obviously, you see countries like that where you have players from Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Dominican bring that over to the big leagues and add some of that excitement here in the States. But I think it got to a point where every team saw other teams playing man, they're having a good time. You saw Team Japan, with Lars Nootbaar doing their thing before the game, guys hitting doubles, having their celebrations at second base. Shohei Ohtani, a guy that's so stoic over here in the States, he goes and plays in the WBC, and you're seeing another side of him. Even Team USA, right, where it's if Team USA, they're gonna, we're do it the right way. Those guys were amped up. Trea Turner hits the homers that he hits throughout the tournament, and that dugout exploded. And so I think it's one of those things where you're like, what can you bottle up from the WBC and bring it over here to Major League Baseball? It is that excitement. It is that flair. It's the things that we've started to see in baseball over the last couple of years or so, where it's man, nobody was offended because guys were amped up and jacked up. Everybody's man, I want to do this for my team. I want to do this for my country. And we're really excited about this moment. And I think that was felt throughout the tournament.
And I love how the fans have their, the special chants. They bring in the instruments. I mean, it just seemed like there was never any downtime. The fans were in it nonstop, even if it was just pool play and not the semis or the finals,
And each team did a good job of making their fan base feel like part of the team, right? In Miami, when you had, Puerto Rico going up against the Dominican Republic, those crowds were insane, electric, if you will. And, every pitch, people are on the edge of their seat. And I think a lot of these guys relish that. And, if you're a guy that played in Oakland or you're playing actually in Miami, and then you see those crowds, you're like, man, this is nothing like I get, when I'm playing in the big league. So let me enjoy this moment.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
All righty. So, I'm sitting here looking here and you look at the numbers at the WBC, especially around the world. I mean, when Japan defeated Korea in Tokyo, 62 million people watched. And when Mexico upset the U.S., you had 534 people in Chase Field. It's Puerto Rico gets past the DR. 62% of households are turned in. I think that the effects of this World Baseball Classic are going to reverberate for a generation. I think that there are going to be kids 10, they're going to play maybe not in the next WBC, but the following WBC that are going to be like, I got into baseball because of what happened in 2023.
100%. Right. And it's not just about, the final, the way it ended. And that's amazing. I'll get to that part. But like to watch throughout and seeing people have a love and a passion for baseball globally is a very big deal. And I don't think we should ignore the fact that not only in the States, but around the globe, people do really care about the game of baseball. And to see it in this way, with this level of passion and excitement, to watch that final where the best player of the last decade, Mike Trout, is struck out by his teammate, and best player of this next decade in Shohei Ohtani, is poetic, right? Like you couldn't write a better script than that if you were an Academy Award winning director. And so you have to pick this ball up and carry it over the next 10 years. If you're Major League Baseball, if you're other countries where it's like, we want to grow the game in our own country, places like the Czech Republic, where I think a lot of people are like, I didn't even know that they played baseball in the Czech Republic. Even them like being involved and seeing some of their players have success is important for the growth of the sport in that country. And so I agree 100%. I think this reverberates for years and years and years into 3, 4, 5 WBCs down the line.
And I don't think people understand. I saw a video from, I don't know if it was MLB Deportes or where I saw it from, but they were talking to some of the Latino players, and they said, yeah, this is, to some, they said either just as big or bigger than the World Series. This is the real World Series. We're playing for our country. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if you're a guy from the Dominican, I mean, you like that Chicago pays the check, but you didn't grow up there. They're not you know what I mean? Like, it's not your home. And so I think these guys played with an emotion that was just that you couldn't compare it to,
Knowing that your whole country is watching back home, I think that does something for a lot of these guys. And so I don't think it is any disrespect to the World Series itself or to their team to say, hey, man, this is bigger to me than the World Series. That's not to say those dudes don't want to go win the World Series. But it's like, if I know that my grandma in San Pedro de Macorís or Santiago or Santo Domingo is watching, and she never gets to watch me play baseball. If I know that all my friends that I grew up with in Bally in the Dominican Republic, or if I know that my doctor, the person that used to babysit me in Bayamon in Puerto Rico, is watching me, I would understand why these guys like are really not only amped up, but are like, no, I have to do this because I'm doing this for them. Like I'm trying to win this for them. I think Benji Gil, the Mexico's manager, told some player like, hey, your at-bats are not yours, right? Your at-bats are for Mexico. And I think there's something so it almost sounds heroic, like he's so saying that and hearing that. But it's really cool. Like, man, no, you think about it. Yeah, these aren't my ABs, right? I can't go out here trying to hit the ball of the ballpark. Like I'm trying to win this for my team, for my country.
And I got to tell you, Russell, the only thing that did disappoint me about the entire tournament is, okay, I get pool play or maybe even the quarterfinals, but you're telling me that Fox had better programming for the semi or the finals than the World Baseball Classic. I went and I looked to see what was on that night, and you're telling me, I don't know. I figured that once they saw the numbers and what the numbers were doing, that they might have tried to bump it in or something. I don't know. That just was confusing to me. I don't know if you know anything about that or why it wouldn't be on the main thing, because there are some people that cut the cord that don't have cable TV. So it should have really been in front of everybody on regular Fox,
I definitely understand what you're saying. And for you, like you said, for people who cut the cord, and we're seeing everything that's happening with regional sports networks and things like that, that might be the only thing that would have changed, right? Being able to have those games, on regular Fox for everybody to see. You had your number one broadcasters on that, and Joe Davis and John Smoltz. And so I think you realize how important this was, putting your number one broadcast team on it. But I would agree with you. Like that would be the one thing, like, man, you if you want to reach even more demographics, having that game on, I think would have been huge.
And I talked to my partner, Dustin, about this, that what ends up happening is that, like, when you think about baseball and the television numbers that it does, like a Thursday night football game with two mediocre teams does better numbers by far than a World Series game. Right. So this was an opportunity, like I said, to really reach the casual fan. You and I, Russ, we're going to watch WBC, we're going to watch Winter League ball, we're going to watch KBO, whatever. But it's not about us. It's about that next generation of fan, you know?
Absolutely. And I think that is something that regardless of what a network does, I think people being able to see this, the way that baseball fans have talked about this, the way I've heard people who aren't the biggest baseball friends talk about it, say, man, I will watch that Shohei Ohtani guy every day for the rest of this year. I think the fact that he as a player is already a superstar, but I think he has a real opportunity to transcend the sport in a similar way that Lionel Messi and Ronaldo have done for soccer, to what LeBron did for basketball. I think that's what you're going to see Shohei Ohtani go to in this next year.
Now, I mean, we got to touch really quick on the injuries to Diaz, Altuve. I'm glad that there was a lot of people that spoke up, because those injuries can happen anywhere. I mean, one was a fluke injury. The other guy got hit by a pitch. That happens in spring training. You know, that's going to happen, but it shouldn't mar what the tournament was.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Those things are terrible and unfortunate, and you want those guys to come back as soon as possible. And for people who say, oh, well, this is why guys shouldn't play in WBC because they're going to go out there and they can get hit or they can get injured. Look what we saw happen to Rhys Hoskins today. Fielding a ground ball, something that he does hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, and he goes out there and tears his ACL, which is so unfortunate a week away from opening day. At the same time, if that happened in the WBC, everybody would want to say something about it. And so it's one of those things, playing a sport, there are going to be freak accidents that happen, and you can't control them, right? Like you or I can go out there and there could be a freak accident, and we can't control that. So to blame that, it's so unfair to blame what was an awesome tournament and blame that for these guys getting injured.
Now, I thought this quote was interesting. Obviously, the U.S., you know, within one run of Japan, like you said, Ohtani versus Trout for that final out. And after this, while the celebration was going on, Nolan Arenado said, quote, players need to do this. We have a really good team, but we need more stars. We need more guys. Why not? I think it's important to play in it. You're throwing hard in spring training. You're playing hard. You might as well do it here on a big stage for your country. When I looked at USA's lineup really looked solid to me. But as far as pitching, obviously there was a glaring weakness there. Do you think that more American players are going to play on the WBC next time around because of what they saw this time?
Absolutely. And the pitching was coming in. Team USA's weakness is it ended up being the thing that cost them a WBC title. But I think there are a lot of guys who watch this like you and I, who play in the big leagues and say, you know what, man, that looks like so much fun. I really enjoyed this experience. And in hearing and seeing the quotes from guys on Team USA, like, man, this is the most fun I've ever had on a baseball field. These 2 weeks being with these guys representing Team USA was the most fun I've ever had. I think that speaks volumes, and they're going to go back and they're going to tell their teammates about that experience. And you know, guys are going to be like, man, I want to be a part of something like that.
Last thing I got to ask you, I got to have you put your Cubs reporter hat back on.
Okay.
Talking about Marcus Stroman, Javier Assad, and Owen Cassie. 3 guys I thought really had, you know, to me as a Cub fan, those were the guys that really impressed me as far as the World Baseball Classic, especially Assad.
Yeah, look, I think with Javier Assad, and if you're a Cubs fan, you're really excited from what you saw because, look, this is a guy who was hitting the upper 90s on the gun, and you're like, whoa, where did that come from? One, I think it's being amped up of representing your country, but 2, hey, maybe this is somebody you see with how the rebuild or retool has gone, and you're gonna have your blue chippers, right? You're gonna have your guys like PCA and Brennan Davis, but you need some guys to surprise you. Right, you need some guys that were not thought of that contribute at the big league level, and that could definitely be an area where you see a guy like a Javier Assad really take the next step.
Russ, I really appreciate you coming on the Fly the W podcast. Where can our listeners find more of your work as far as where can they read it? Where can they follow you on Twitter?
You can read all my stuff, ballysports.com. I'm doing a ton of stuff over there, video content. I have an interview with Dansby Swanson that I think Cubs fans will really enjoy at Russ_Dorsey1 on Twitter, at Russ_Dorsey on IG.
Russ, I appreciate you. I miss you on the Cubs beat, and I hope you continue success, and thanks for hopping on, and we look forward to having you back on in the future.
My God. Thanks, Crawly. Appreciate the invite.
This is Season 2, Episode number 21, a World Baseball Classic for the ages. This is the Fly the W podcast. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to it. And Crawly, let's talk about the U.S. They come in second to Team Japan, but they did pound Team Cuba 14-2.
Yeah, this was really, I think baseball needed this. This was something, again, with the lockout last season and all that craziness and COVID before that, I think this got me fired up for baseball, and I think it was absolutely important to the sport. We talked about last time on the Fly the W podcast that the U.S. pounded Cuba, like you said. And so now you ended up having a good game. The other semifinal game was phenomenal. Team Japan taking on Team Mexico to see who would secure their spot in the finals. These two games, Dustin, was what baseball was all about. In the classic David versus Goliath story, you have Team Mexico, right, who shocked a lot of baseball observers for getting as far as they did, taking on the powerhouse Japanese team. It was a pitcher's duel early until the fourth inning. Luis Urias of the Brewers hit a 3-run blast to put Team Mexico up 3-0. That lead would hold until the bottom of the seventh as the Angels, Patrick Sandoval, and the Astros, Jose Urquidy, held the mighty Japanese squad scoreless. Remember that name, Dustin. Jose Urquidy. That was the player that Jed thought he had traded for Wilson Contreras until Dusty Baker torpedoed the deal. So He did really great in that game. He came in, he pitched well, and then with 2 outs in the seventh, he gave up a single to Kensuke Koto. And so Mexico's manager went to the pen and called on Cardinals pitcher Jojo Romero to get the final out of the inning. The first batter he has to face is Shohei Ohtani, who he walks. Okay, that's going to happen. You're going to walk. You're going to be very careful with Shohei Ohtani. But then the next batter, Masataka Yoshida, hit a towering 2-run homer to tie the game. Complete momentum shift, shock. But after just giving up the lead in the seventh, in the eighth inning, Randy Arozarena, who absolutely made Team Mexico just so much fun. The guy was just laughing, smiling, making amazing catches, hitting the crap out of the ball, throwing baseballs in the dugout during the game. I couldn't even count how many baseballs he was throwing to fans. He leads off the inning with a double, followed by a double by Alex Verdugo, and then a single by Joey Menendez and Isaac Paredes to put Mexico back up 5-3. But Menendez was thrown out at the plate on that Paredes single to end the inning. So that potential run is going to come up huge here. Japan scored a run to make it 5-4 in the eighth. Mexico couldn't score in the ninth, and Japan was 3 outs away from elimination. Leading off, Shohei Ohtani doubles, Matsuzaka Yoshida walks, and then Munetaka Muramaki doubled to walk it off. Stunning Team Japan and Team Mexico.
Yeah, both sides were stunned, Crawly.
It was absolutely unbelievable. And Dustin, when I kind of take a look at this game, Mexico's manager, Benji Gil, said, Japan advances, but the world of baseball won tonight. And I felt that about the entire tournament, is that it really didn't matter who won. If you are a baseball purist, if you enjoyed baseball, or maybe if you were just getting into baseball for the first time, this was an exciting, exciting tournament.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think a couple different people said it. Baseball won. That's what happened. This was a win. This is a win for baseball, and I hope it carries through into the start of the regular season.
Now, that set up the matchup we were all waiting for, Team USA versus Team Japan. Pomp and circumstance, Trout leads out the U.S. team, while his Angels teammate Shohei Ohtani led out the Japanese team. Trea Turner started out the scoring with his 3rd home run in 3 games to put the U.S. up 1-0 in the top of the second. Japan immediately answered with a Munetaka Murakawa solo home run to lead off the inning to tie it. Lars Nootbaar grounded out with the bases loaded to make it a 2-1 Team Japan lead, but it could have been, or a 2-1 lead for the U.S., but it could have been way worse as Japan had the bases loaded with only 1 out and scored only 1 run. So it's 2-1 Japan on that one. In the bottom of the 4th, Kazuzama Omokata homered to put Japan in front 3-1. And that's how it stayed until who else, Dustin? Mr. Big Game, Kyle Schwarber, hit one of his majestic blasts off his old Cubs teammate, Yu Darvish, in an epic 10-pitch at bat to pull the U.S. within 3-2.
You got to know that I love that. I absolutely love that he hit that off of Yu Darvish. Loved it.
Well, let's take a look at this right here real quick, Dustin. Kyle Schwarber hit a home run, has homered in the NL Wild Card game, the AL Wild Card game, the NL Division Series, the AL Division Series, the NL Championship Series, the AL Championship Series, the World Series, the World Baseball Classic, and the World Baseball Classic Championship game.
Pretty impressive. Pretty impressive.
If that doesn't scream big game, I don't know what does. And I'm like you. I just, for $7 million to non-tender him and let him walk, that was a bad one. That was a bad one.
I said on the score, I said if I was ever allowed to have a beer with Jed and or Theo, and I could ask any question I wanted, and I could be given an honest answer that I would not repeat on the air, that would be my question. How in the world, explain to me why you let him get away? That would be my question.
It is where we are. And so in the ninth inning, Shohei Ohtani comes out of the bullpen to thunderous applause. He walked Jeff McNeil, but then got Mookie Betts to ground into a double play. So Team USA down to their last out. Who is the batter coming up? Mike Trout. I mean, how poetic. How
Hollywood,
baseball.
Hollywood, Crawly. It's Hollywood. You couldn't. This is writing a script. That's what's going on here.
Seriously, the two greatest players in baseball, teammates, facing each other to decide the tournament, and it goes 3-2. You know it's going to go 3-2. And Ohtani's throwing 101, 102 mile per hour fastballs. Trout is staying alive, and you just wonder who's going to give in. And eventually, he's seeing 102, and all of a sudden, Ohtani rips a slider that just dots the corner to give Japan the WBC. Absolutely an amazing ending to an amazing tournament. And like I said, I was so happy to see that, and it was so much fun, just so enjoyable.
I don't know about how enjoyable and fun it was. I would rather Team USA win, but I understand where you're coming from.
I guess for me, Dustin, I didn't have a horse in this race. I didn't care if Team USA, I didn't care, I'm not got my flag on and my USA chant going. I just wanted to see great baseball and a great tournament. You
saw that. You got that. If that's what you wanted, you got it. You did get that.
And here's the thing, Dustin, is that you're trying to make baseball a worldwide sport. And I think that there's going to be, for years, people are going to talk about this World Baseball Classic and how it got them
it'll be
into
remembered.
the sport.
You're right. Yep, it'll be remembered. Yep.
There's going to be some kid in 15 years that said, I was a little kid watching that, and I wanted to be part of that World Baseball Classic. And maybe that kid's from the Czech Republic. Maybe that kid's from Taiwan. Maybe that kid's from Mexico. But think about this. The total attendance for 15 World Baseball Classic games in Miami, just in Miami, was 475,269. The Marlins attendance for 2022, 81 home games, was 907,487. So think about, when you think about the numbers around here, I mean, it was in Japan and in Puerto Rico, in that Puerto Rico Dominican game that we were talking about.
Yeah.
The amount of people turning on the game was 65% American households, Dustin. That's just ridiculous. I mean, I don't think people understand it. And here's the thing is that when you look at this, baseball has suffered in this country. It really has not. When I was growing up, it was still pretty big. When my dad growing up, it was the number one sport in the country. Now, a Thursday night meaningless football game with two crappy teams can outdraw a World Series game.
Not just outdraw, I mean, dominate it. I mean, absolutely dominated, yes.
And I am one who hopes that I have been saying this whole time, I hope the changes that they made with the rules, which have been talked about, I'm hoping that the World Baseball Classic, I'm hoping all these things draw interest in the game of baseball, because to me, it's the greatest sport that's out there. And I think that the World Baseball Classic did a phenomenal job of showcasing the talent And my hope is that it continues. I hope that Dustin, if you want better results for the USA, more American players have got to get involved in it. I think with the USA, I think that the hitters they had a pretty darn good lineup, pretty good representative lineup. Some of the best players when you talk about Mookie Betts and Mike Trout and Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt. But what they didn't have was pitching. And if
they didn't have enough pitching, and hopefully they'll get that the next time around. Absolutely, I totally agree with you, Crawly. I think the rules and what happened in the World Baseball Classic is a real nice exacta, if you will, to get the baseball fans into this and get things going. And again, Crawly, it starts a week from today, and you will be there for what, your 23rd consecutive home opener?
23rd consecutive home opener. I'm going to be starting, if you follow me on social media at Crawly's Cubs, I will be kind of tracking my progress of the day as best I can for as long as I can remember to, starting at output first thing in the morning.
Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow us on socials, Fly the W 670 on Facebook, gmail.com. And now you can watch us on YouTube by subscribing to the 670 The Score YouTube channel. Crawly, have a great weekend, and hopefully you get everything you want in the next couple of days. And as you like to say, go Cubs!
Cubs!